I call this meeting to order. Let us stand for the flag salute and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I don't think my speaker's on. No, it's on. Yes. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Sotile?
Present.
Commissioner Morose?
Present.
Commissioner Serco?
Present.
Commissioner Pollock-Root? Not here. And Commissioner Valles? 4 commissioners present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Oh, there she is.
Should we retake it or? Okay.
Welcome to the El Cajon Planning Commission meeting. This meeting is being live streamed on the City of El Cajon website. Appeals of the final decision of the Planning Commission made this evening must be filed in writing with the City Clerk before 5 p.m. Monday, May 16th, 2022, and must include the payment of a filing fee. If you wish to speak on either a non-agenda or an agenda item tonight, please fill out a request to speak card located by the agenda and turn it in to the secretary, who will call you up to speak when the agenda item comes up for public comment. We ask that you give us your name, spelling your last name. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. The display on the podium, as well as the other monitors in the chambers, will show time counting down. At 30 seconds, the podium clock readout will turn red, signifying you have 30 seconds until the end of your time. Applicants and individuals representing groups of people may be allowed more time if appropriate. All public hearing comments should be addressed to me as the chair of the commission and not to individual commissioners or staff members. Please turn off all electronic devices if you have not already done so. Pursuant to the City Council Resolution number 114-79, a commissioner who has received evidence related to a matter before the Planning Commission other than an unescorted view of the subject property is required to disclose such information at the hearing. Once a point has been made, subsequent speakers supporting that point should simply indicate agreement with it or go on to my new points they have. Extraneous, irrelevant, and repetitive testimony will not straighten your position, but straighten the meeting for everyone. The public hearing is not a debate. Speakers may not return to the podium unless the commission calls upon them to do so. Proper decorum should be adhered to at all times during the Planning Commission meeting. Clapping, booing, and shouting out from the audience are disrespectful, delays the proceedings, and has no place in this meeting. When your item is over, please leave the chambers to socialize. Staying and talking interferes with ongoing commission business and is disrespectful for applicants and citizens whose items are yet to be heard. At this time, we will take comments from any member of the public on any item of business within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not on the agenda. Under state law, no action can be taken on items brought forward under public comment except to refer it to staff for administration or place it on a future agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to address the Commission under public comment? Please come forward. We'll go to the consent calendar at this time. A single motion will cover all items on the consent calendar. Does the commission wish to pull a consent calendar item for discussion?
No.
No.
Does the staff wish to pull a consent calendar item for discussion?
No, thank you.
Okay. May we have a motion?
I move to adopt the minutes.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Commissioner Circa, second by Commissioner Rose. Please vote.
Commissioner Rose and Commissioner Circa. I do not see your votes yet.
Okay.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. We'll go to the second item. Okay, the second item is the Oakdale and Mint subdivision. It's a request, a two-lot subdivision in the RS6 zone, and it's CEQA exempt. And the staff recommendation is to approve. Staff?
All right, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Item number 2 for your consideration is the Oakdale and Mint project, which proposes a two-lot subdivision in the RS6 zone. The project number is tentative parcel map number 2021-0004, and the project was submitted by Delgesh Shahab. The project proposes a two-lot subdivision on a site which was formerly Caltrans right-of-way. The proposal is not part of a planned unit development or other development permit, so no homes are proposed with this action. And the project is conditioned to include the street improvements connecting Oakdale and Mint Avenues. It should be noted that when adjacent subdivisions were approved, a 1-foot strip was added adjacent to the subject property in order to reserve and ultimately require street improvements consistent with the general plan. As you'll see on the next slide, the majority of the site is designated low-density residential, LR, in the general plan land use map. The zone for the property is RS6, residential, single-family, 6,000 square foot, consistent with that general plan designation. The site is just shy of an acre at about 38,000 square feet and is currently vacant. In terms of topography, there are no major constraints to subdivide. However, the site is located just south of Forster Creek, so portions of the site are within the 100 and 500-year floodplains. And then again, here's a quick screenshot of our general plan land use map. The area outlined in red is within that LR designation and is also within the R6 zone. The area designated LR is approximately 29,800 square feet, which means that roughly 8,500 square feet of that lot were intended for public street improvements. And then here we've highlighted the full extent of the site boundary, and it's more clear which portions of that site are situated between Oakdale and Mint Avenues. I know that PowerPoint is never the best way to view these maps, but here's the proposed tentative parcel map for 2 lots. I'll just note that building outlines for single-family homes are only shown in concept, that future development of these sites would be subject to building permit review and would not come to the Planning Commission for review. I'll also mention that the proposed parcels are fairly large in comparison to the surrounding RS6 zoned neighborhood, and that's mostly due to the large triangular shape to the rear of the lots just south of Forster Creek. In terms of the surrounding context, the site is primarily adjacent to other single-family parcels in the RS6 zone, although there is some small-scale apartment development to the west along Oakdale Avenue. Surrounding parcels are relatively uniform in shape and size, and like I mentioned, the proposed subdivision, those lots are slightly larger than the surrounding RS6 zone parcels because of that odd shape. Given zoning code standards and conditions for street improvements, the maximum number of parcels is 2 as requested. It should also be noted that the created parcels may be developed pursuant to other state legislation, not just our zoning code. So Assembly Bill 68 and Senate Bill 9 may apply. AB 68 allows for development of accessory dwelling units, as we're probably all familiar, and Senate Bill 9 may allow for urban lot splits or development of second primary homes. Again, review of ADUs, SB 9 projects, and just regular single-family home development would be ministerial, subject to a building permit review, and would not come to the Planning Commission. And I guess it should be noted as well that those state legislations also apply to the surrounding single-family zone properties. All right. As discussed in a little bit of detail already, the general plan indicates that a portion of the site is intended for public street improvements. Typically, those conditioned improvements include the half width adjacent to the front of the property, not the full width of the street. In this case, it's obviously a different scenario where there is no existing street, and so the conditions address the full width of the street. And recognizing that that might be an impediment to reaching consistency with the general plan and to development potentially, staff worked with the applicant to draft a reimbursement agreement, which was included in the attachments. I wanted to point out that one public comment was received via email just prior to the meeting, and that was placed in front of you before you got here. The project is exempt to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15332 for infill development projects. It meets all the criteria listed under that section. And staff recommendation is to adopt the next resolutions in order, approving CEQA exemption and tentative parcel map 2021-004, subject to conditions. And staff are available to answer any questions you have.
The extension of the road, of connecting the two roads, is part of the general plan, correct?
Correct.
It's been there for a long time.
Correct.
So that it's there. It's not. We're not voting on something that has to do with the road because it's already there.
It's the connection is a condition on the map. So on this approval. So you are reviewing the tentative parcel map for a 2-lot subdivision. The conditions include that connection consistent with the general plan.
Okay. And even though that lot was previously owned by Caltrans, they still had the same condition insofar as extending the road, the Oakdale and Mint Avenue.
Caltrans could have done, their state agency. They could have, it was originally purchased, I believe, in order to have a freeway or a highway go through there. And so they are subject to their own regulations. Since it was sold privately, it was already in the general plan designation for LR in one portion and a street connection on the other portion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Fellow commissioners, do you have any? Oh, can you hear me? No, my mic is not on. Oh, it's on. Oh, you put it on. Thank you.
Yep. No questions for me.
I have a slight question that may or may not be something you guys can answer, but I was looking at the satellite view of the parcel, and it looked like the triangular portion behind the developed property has a fence. And is it my imagination, or does the triangle go past the backside of 2 separate lots?
Yeah, correct. It actually does extend behind 2 other lots.
Okay. I think my question is, do the people in those lots know that?
Oh, so you're indicating that they fenced it off?
It seems to be fenced off. I haven't actually been to the property.
I was not aware of that. Interesting. I do not know if they're aware of that or not.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? No? Okay. All right. We'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to address this item Please come forward, giving us your name and spelling your last name.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may interject, we do have the applicant present, and we have multiple speaker slips. So, if acceptable, we can call speaker slips from
yes,
the dais.
I'm sorry.
Is
Yes,
that okay?
that's right. We have a
Thank you.
list.
Want me to wait?
I apologize. We have a list of people that we're going to call. Okay.
The first speaker, please, Delgesh Shahab. Oh, yes. Sorry.
Hello, Mr. Jahad.
Hi, I'm Delga Shop.
Yes.
Previously,
Give us your name, and can you spell your last name?
sure, that's Shahab Shahab with a B.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, do you have any comments that you wish to make before we start asking you questions?
Yes, I do have a comment to make regarding to the purchase. Beforehand, I went to the city staff. I did my due diligence, went inside, and asked for any improvements, which beforehand nobody told me there's going to be any improvements made. So it's not a part of the plan, at least beforehand. Once I purchased the property, they came back, saying, you know what, there's going to be a public improvement. And I asked them, what does the improvement be? They told me there's going to be street connection, which I was surprised. And then back and forward, a lot of discussion made, a lot of agreements are made. But eventually we came to an agreement that I had no choice. Basically, I had to subdivide it. Well, I have to map it, and part of the condition of approval is to build a street. And that's my comment. I feel like it's injustice at this point, Commissioner.
And have you read the conditions of approval?
Yes, I read them. Yes,
You agree with them?
yes.
Okay. Let me ask the fellow.
I was just curious, do you remember who you spoke to prior to the purchase to get that information? Was it like a clerk or someone in the planning department? Do you remember?
Was at the planning department, at the city planning department. I walked in, I asked the front desk, I was a lady back then, and I asked the question, hey, before I purchase the plan, is going to be any type of conditions or street? Because when you look at it, it looks like it's going to be street connected or in cul-de-sac. So I asked before I purchased it, and told me there's no any conditions so far. And then I purchased it, and my intent to be building one home for myself, for my kids to raise, and nothing else. And after I purchased it, told me, you know what, there is a condition. You have to build a street after I purchased it. And I did ask Caltrans. Caltrans didn't mention any type of street. There was, back then, not even topic about any improvement at all. So here I am.
Yeah. Do you know who he should have spoke to regarding that? Because it sounds like he didn't get the right information. I'm just curious if the person at the front desk is really the person he should have spoke with, you know?
So I don't know the specific person that the applicant spoke to, and I don't know the information that was conveyed. But I do know that as part of what the application being submitted and reviewed, it was reviewed, and then the information provided about the requirements for improving the street as it relates to the general plan. The one thing that I do want to clarify is that the option was presented of changing the application to include a general plan amendment on top of the parcel map to subdivide the property. And so the purpose of the general plan amendment would have been to close that road. So since it's on the general plan, they could have proposed to close it and do a general plan amendment. So the primary issue with the general plan amendment is that the project would no longer be exempt from CEQA, and it would require additional environmental analysis, including likely a traffic study to look at how those impacts would be addressed. So the position from staff is that this was anticipated by the general plan, analyzed under the general plan for the provision of life and safety services to all the surrounding subdivisions, and that the subdivisions on each side of the subject site were also designed in anticipation of the road connection. So if that road connection wasn't anticipated, it would have had cul-de-sacs, and they wouldn't have reserved the 1-foot strip of land that separated each of those adjacent streets from the subject site. So with that said, it came down to a decision by the applicant to decide to either move forward with the exempt CEQA project and the map that conforms to the general plan, or to do that additional analysis look at proposing to change that, allow staff to look at that analysis and the implications and do that environmental review. And so the applicant ultimately decided to bring the project forward as proposed and conditioned tonight, consistent with the general plan.
Okay, so what you're saying is, in order to basically remove that piece from the general plan, do all the studies, was there ever any studies done with Caltrans as far as environmental impact studies? Do you know?
Well, Caltrans being their own agency of the state, they would have studied their own projects independent of the city. But essentially what Caltrans was doing back in the 70s and 80s is they were collecting land for the future freeway that had been planned to go through there. And then when that was removed from the general plan, they started to sell off their excess land properties. And then the city just applied the existing general plan designations that were there.
Can we go online and pull up the site, but like on a Google Maps, so that we can move it around and pan in and out and stuff? Okay. All right. Were you aware of that other option? I'm just curious.
Right. Yeah, I was aware after I spent a lot of money to process this plan at all, and then afterwards, there's a lot of change going in the staff. I had the director was leaving, the public work director stepped down, and then the deputy director stepped in, and then the planning department person left the department. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of moving going on, a lot of discussion were made, comments are made, and approvals are made, and then a lot of change happened. And after I spoke with Noah and Spencer a couple weeks ago, they did mention this plan, but I'm already way deep down with cost. I cannot go back and redo this at this point. Sure. I'm not a developer. I'm just a regular guy who's working, trying to build a dream home. That's it.
Okay. So now you got to build two?
The reason we put two on the plan is due to the engineer recommended. You're already spending the money. You're already mapping it. Why not subdivide it? You have the piece of the land. The intent to be just building one home, and that's it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have I'm not a developer. I'm just
building. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Okay. Yeah. All right, great. All right, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, if I could ask a question. So you indicated that this road improvement had been on the general plan for quite some time. And my understanding is the general plan is a public record. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So anyone could go on and look and see, and the information was there that there would be a requirement, at least if you were to follow the general plan, to improve the road. This was not something that would have been the obligation of even a staff member at a front desk to convey that information, since it would be helpful, but not obligatory.
Correct. It's shown on the general map as being a road that would continue through. It's not, someone would have to make that assumption when looking at the subject site in its undeveloped state that would be a requirement. But it would have been something that would come up through review and through questioning.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Laura, any?
Okay, next speaker, Timothy Swing.
Mr. Swing, give us your name, spelling your last name.
My name's Timothy Swing. I live on Trenton Street, which your picture does not show. You see the bend where Trenton goes down and meets, makes a right angle turn just east of where you want to have the lots? Okay. That becomes Jade Street. All those units in that back area, which we were before this planning commission many years ago, when that had a single house on it, and somebody wanted to put a bunch of move-ons that were removed from freeway future access areas. The people that live in there come out of there at this intersection of Jade and Trenton, come roaring down Trenton to Madison. make a left turn on Madison, and go to the schools. If they're not rolling down to the schools, they're rolling down Trenton and making a right turn and heading west on Madison to go to work or wherever they're going. I've been talking to the council member for this city who covers that area. And asked him why you can't do something about their speeding. That's a residential street, and the speed limit is 25 miles an hour. I live on the lot at 555 Trenton. There's a fire hydrant in front of my house, and then the street makes a gentle sweep to the right and then a sweep back to the left. I even propose that they put speed bumps on the street to slow down these speeders. And what's going to happen when you open that Mint to Oakdale? When they're going to work, they'll whip down Mint to Oakdale to head down to 2nd Street or head east on 8th. Total disregard for residential speed of 25 miles an hour. There's a hell of a lot of kids in that area. The reason I bought my house on Trenton was because of the schools. Because I was planning on marrying a young lady and for the kids to go to the schools. You open that up and it's going to be worse. You're going to have speeders going down Mint to Oakdale, straight down to Main Street. Either make a right or continue on down Oakdale to 2nd Street.
All right, Mr. Swain, your time is
You
up.
need to stop.
Okay. Your time is up. Let me ask my fellow commissioners to have any questions. You have any questions? Come back. Come back. Let's see if our fellow commissioners have any questions that they'd like to ask you. Do you have any questions?
Not this time.
Okay.
Also, your map specifically eliminated the people on Trenton.
All right. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, gentlemen, but that's discrimination under the ADA Act. There are 4 subsections.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker, Martha Avery.
My name is Martha Avery, A-V-E-R-Y. I live at 573 Durham Street, which is adjacent to Dell's property. So with Mint going through, it's going to, let's see. If you drew a line right now on the south section from Oakdale to Mint, I own that. That's my house right below that. And I own all that property. And I bought it from Caltrans. Well, 2 things. When I first wanted the property and realized that Caltrans was going to, I forget what they call it, but they finally decided to get rid of something. They're going to put it up for bid. I went to the Planning Commission. I talked with Spencer Hayes. I'm sure he doesn't remember it, but it was probably 10 or more years ago. And I had pictures of my property and how it sit and where. Anyway, I asked the question, is Mint ever going to go through? Never. He even went back and talked to whoever was in charge of him. And he came back, he says, no, there is no plan for Mint ever to go through. So I didn't buy the property because Mint wasn't going to go through, but that was part of my knowledge. And then I'm trying to think the second time. When I was looking at the property and talking with Caltrans and again trying to decide, And my daughter, who lives next door to me, she called and she got the, no, it's never going through. So somewhere it has changed, because 10 years ago in the big plan, and I don't know how they change and how often they change and how I would know they'd change, but there's been a change. And nothing was ever said to anybody in the neighborhood except for recently, as that property is now privately owned. And they've told me that if I do any improvements, which I'd like to do, I will trigger the street going through, and that's where Dell is right now. He loses huge chunk of his land, and he had no way of knowing that would possibly happen, because all the information that we got and that I gathered was, no, it wasn't going to happen. So there's a time, maybe director of the development can tell me when that changed, because it was not that way in the beginning. And I've lived there over 50 years.
Noah, when was it included in the general plan that that street will go through? Do you know?
So it's been shown on the general plan since the last major update in the 1980s, so the 1984 revision to the maps and then carrying forward. I think that there's one, nuance in these discussions and conversations that sometimes occurs at the public counter, and it's with regards to when roads are going to be constructed. So sometimes people will ask, is the city going to build that road, or when is that road going to go through? And so the response from staff would typically be, there's no plans for that road to be constructed by the city at this point, and that the city only requires public road improvements in conjunction with new construction or the subdivision of land. So I know it's a bit of a nuance, but I would say that that you could ask a question about when the road's going through, and we'd say that there's no plans for the road to go through on the city. But if someone were to bring forward an application, that was when we would review it and then condition it based on the general plan.
Okay.
Well, we both bought the Caltrans property with the knowledge that it wasn't going to go through.
Okay. Well, thank you. Fellow commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Avery?
I'm just curious on that plan, if that road is to be built, are they going to put a curb along her property line and a sidewalk? Is that the plan?
So yes, the applicant's property extends across the full width of the public right-of-way, and it's conditioned for full-width street improvements, including curbs, gutters, and sidewalks on both sides of the street.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
So that would be my side too.
Right. So,
Yes.
And
so I saw that you have a fence there.
I do now.
And then
yes.
on the other side of that, would be where the curb and gutter go. And,
Yeah.
Sidewalk.
If it goes through.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Commissioner Circle?
Mrs. Avery,
Yes.
I was looking at the lot. Is your lot curved?
No, I bought that
Buy that.
curved. What I bought from Caltrans, I own the property with the
Yeah.
round, but I bought that triangle that's
Okay.
got the round.
Thank you. I was curious about that
Yeah.
too.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Laura.
Okay. The next speaker, Derek Trimpe, please.
Good evening. I'm Derek Trimpe. That's T-R-I, M as in Michael, P as in Paul, I. And I live at 575 Macon Street. That's the first street to the east of where this is going to open up, 2 houses down from Mint Avenue. 1959, my grandparents bought that house when it was brand new in that division. My mom and her sister grew up in that house, playing on Mint Avenue. It was closed. I grew up playing on those streets, walking those streets. Mint Avenue was closed. My 2 girls, age 18 months and 7, now are growing up, walking these streets, playing on these streets. It's a quiet neighborhood. We don't get much traffic, but that's all going to change if Mint gets opened up to Oakdale. There's a lot of traffic that comes down Oakdale. Morning school traffic, afternoon school traffic. What do you think is going to happen to the people that wait in that line in the morning? They're going to try and come through our neighborhoods, leaving school in the afternoon, coming in the morning. Oakdale and 3rd is only a yield. That's going to require the city to look at that intersection and redo that intersection. Having a yield going through to Oakdale on the Mint is not going to work. There's going to be way too many cars going through. It's going to be traffic accidents. It's unsafe for everybody walking that neighborhood. We have a lot of kids, we have a lot of elderly, we have a lot of wives and men out walking their dogs every day. The traffic will be a nightmare going through there. Coming to school in the morning, they're all going to file through the neighborhoods. They're still going to have to turn back out onto Madison. It's going to clog up Madison even more with people trying to make left-hand turns out of this neighborhood all morning long. Leaving school, same thing. So I'm opposing this street, and I hope that you guys can see what we're talking about. Maybe we can do a traffic study or something, because either way it's going to cause a lot more problems than it's going to solve.
Well, tonight we're considering subdividing that land, but the construction of the street, it's up to the owner or developer. It's not.
From what we're taking, it's all in the same plan. What you guys are approving tonight is approving that whole thing, because it's listed as street improvements right there in the agenda.
Right, because it is in the general plan currently.
Yes. And that's what we are opposing.
Okay.
What is the street right there? Is that Durham, the one that's right there?
Durham's to the
Oakdale?
west and Macon's to the east.
Okay, so currently, what street are people taking to get to Granite? Because I know they're cutting through. I know that cut through well. I live off Bermuda, off Greenfield, so I know.
Can't
I
cut
know
through
that.
right there in our neighborhood.
Are they taking Durham? What about the street in front of it? What's the other one there? Is that Third?
Yeah.
That's Third.
So those are the two that they're basically cutting through now.
Saves you a little bit of time cutting through there. 'Cause you're
Okay.
halfway on Third.
Okay.
They move up around. If that's open, you got 4 more streets to run down.
Yeah, you get to.
They'll be going down Trenton. They'll be going down Galena. They'll be going all through that neighborhood, trying to turn left onto Madison in the mornings, trying to go to school.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So I've heard the term more traffic, more traffic, more traffic. Are you anticipating more cars on these streets?
Oh, absolutely.
Than currently? Are there
Absolutely.
going to be more students attending? I'm just confused about where more traffic is coming from, or is it just going to disperse the traffic onto different streets?
It's going to disperse the current traffic that's there through the neighborhood, but then when they're in the neighborhood, they still have to try and turn left out of all those streets back onto Madison, which is going to cause even more problems than people just waiting in line in Madison to go up to Madison Elementary and Granite Hills High School. Because now you're going to have all these cars that are trying to cut time going through the neighborhoods, trying to turn left, cutting across westbound traffic to go east to the schools.
If it would be more difficult to make a left-hand turn, I know myself as a driver and a mother and a grandmother that picks up a child, I'm going to choose to pick a right-hand turn.
And
So, because it is, especially if I am tight for time. So I'm just wondering if we're thinking something might happen, and in some ways this might alleviate some of the issues of people who are now trying to speed around because they've waited in a longer line and they've been able to pass through something quicker and drop their child off or pick their child up.
you could make a right-hand turn, but then you wouldn't be going to the schools, so you wouldn't be driving through the neighborhood anyways.
Okay.
The schools are east of this neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know.
All right. I see it. Okay, any other questions? Yes. Commissioner Rood, Pollock Rood.
Perfect. Being someone who lives by school, I don't live by Granite, but I live by Grossmont, and I do live in a neighborhood that has issues with traffic. I know that part of the general plan is to have this go through, and I know someone discussed having speed bumps. Would that be something that would be under consideration? Because that might alleviate some of the issues with speed, because it is part of the plan. I know the speed bumps aren't, but I know regardless, the general plan does have this road going through if he develops.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Mario Sanchez, City Engineer. It's been a long-going policy that the city does not put in speed bumps. They do other measures and look at speed, measure the speed, put out speed limit signs, and ask the police to enforce any conditions, traffic conditions out there. Sometimes we put it in stop signs where it's warranted and so forth, but The first step, we don't put in speed bumps.
The only reason why I ask is because I do live where they did put a whole bunch of speed bumps in on Duane and also on El Monte and a few other streets. Because there was a speed problem, so a bunch were put in. That was the only reason why I asked that.
Yeah, so they're just too controversial, and that's why they did away with putting in speed bumps. And the last time we put them in was probably about 2008. So.
And that was on city streets, though?
It was on city streets, on Lincoln.
So what was the controversy? People are driving too slow?
No, not driving too slow. The time it takes to cross the street, suspension to their vehicles. Some people with bad backs complained about hurting their backs and so forth. So it's
can't please anyone, can you?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, the next speaker, Michael Pepin.
Good evening. Michael Pepin. It's P-E-P-I-N. It's no surprise I do work for the water district here in town, but I'm not representing them at all when I speak here tonight. I will get that clear. However, I will say I respond to numerous emergencies daily, dealing with the city officials on site. Making it through street here isn't going to help any of that as far as responding to emergencies. It doesn't matter if we come down Macon or Durham. We have maps of what streets are open. I would like to point out I grew up on Jade Avenue, 42 years. I currently live on Verdon Street now with my family of 4. Speed is an issue already with some of the younger drivers in the area, and I've called the city numerous times, and I get the same story about the speed bumps. What I see here is I deal with it also with what I do. When we see something come up like this, we see what we can do to improve our area. But doing this, you're opening up this entire neighborhood to an unfortunate situation that's going on at East Main Street. And if you drive that tonight, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's turned bad down there, and you're opening up this neighborhood, this friends that come over from different areas. It's one honey hole left in this town that's safe. And East Main isn't. And you're making a through street from East Main, and you're opening it up to all these little streets that are left. Really good neighborhoods that a lot of families live there for 40 years. And this poor guy is trying to build a nice home for his family. And we all know if he put a cul-de-sac in there, he'd have a really nice setup for his family. I see a quick grab at a street making this guy pay for it. And I don't think it's right. And I think if you really study these maps and go drive this area, you'll see what you're opening up. And it's going to be a mess for me and my family. I also have a rental on Galena. And if the street goes through, I'm out. They'll both be sold. Because I've seen the situation and how it's changed over the years. And there's nothing good going on Main Street. And you're opening that up to homeless and other bad situations that we've fortunately been sheltered from because they don't come through there. They just turn and they come out to Madison. They head right back out to 2nd Street. So I hope you guys look at this real hard before you do this. And it's not going to be good for any of us.
Okay, thank you very much. Staff, what's the possibility of having a cul-de-sac there on both sides of the road? Would it have to go through the CEQA and through the environmental study and all that in order to have that done, completed?
Correct. So essentially it would have to be part of the applicant's proposal. So they would have to propose to amend the general plan, and then they would have to propose a new road design that could be evaluated by the Public Works Department. And then it would have to go through additional reviews in order to determine the appropriate conditions of approval, and then analyzed for consistency with the general plan. And then, like you said, the CEQA analysis to see if there's any associated impacts with that change. As I mentioned before, that option was presented, but ultimately the applicant decided to move forward with this proposal, which is consistent with the general plan.
Okay, thank you. Laura.
May I ask a question on
Yes.
the general plan, not the general plan, the disclosures? And this might be for Ms. Luck. As a seller of a property, Caltrans was the seller of the property? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Would it have been their obligation to have disclosed any of this information? Or again, since it's a matter of public record, it would be the buyer's responsibility to investigate?
I'm not aware of what the conditions are for Caltrans selling its property. If I were to guess, I would say it would be on the buyer to look into it and investigate. And since the city's general plan is a public record and is available, this is something they probably should have looked into.
Okay.
And so just to clarify what we're voting on, we're simply voting on the subdivision, not making a change to the general plan,
Correct.
which is what we were talking about.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Now, Laura, you have another speaker?
Yes. Next speaker, Carly Float. Flott.
Spell that for us. Oh, no, when you get on the mic.
F as in Frank, L-O-T as in Tom. So my name is Carly. I live at 1550 Mint Avenue. I am the neighbor to the right of the lot, east of the lot. And we bought that house.
Can you zoom in on that for me?
December 2019 with the attraction for our kids to be safe and play outside, like some of my neighbors have mentioned. Opening that road would bring in more traffic, like some have mentioned, increased transient population, crime. This is the one last pocket in the neighborhood that's safe. I can count on my fingers since the time we moved in where we've had to call the cops for something. It's been like twice. We feel safe in our neighborhood. We love our neighbors. Kids from multiple streets down flock to this side of the neighborhood to play. We have a basketball hoop. They ride bikes. Opening this up would change all of that. It's not that we don't want a neighbor. We're excited to have Dell build a home for his family. Our neighbors are here tonight suggesting that that road does not go all the way through, whether it's a cul-de-sac or a retaining wall on one side. We just really, truly don't want the road to go all the way through. In the week that you guys sent us the letter notifying us about this meeting, and I noticed that there's only about 22 houses that were notified because we have the most, I guess, crucial impact to this suggestion. We took it upon ourselves to walk door to door and talk to our neighbors about this. We collected about 100 signatures from neighbors that do not want this road to go through, and I'm happy to provide that to you guys tonight. I feel like your suggestion of only these 22 houses is inconsiderate to the rest of the neighborhood. Not just these 22 houses are affected, my entire neighborhood would be affected by this on the east side. And then I guess I have a question for all of you is, if we haven't had this road forever, why do we have to have it now? Why? Why can't we leave it as is? I understand that plans were in place a long time ago, but things have changed. This is a neighborhood that's safe, that has lots of families. Adding that road doesn't do anything. Maybe it adds a little bit of less traffic from the schools, but to be honest, I really truly feel like it's going to do the opposite. As soon as parents know that that street is open, they are going to cut through and come flying down that street. I challenge you, if you don't live in Granite Hills, come drive through my neighborhood and you'll see exactly what we're talking about. Come out at 7:30 in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It is ape shit at that four-way stop. So I really hope that you guys take our considerations, into account tonight, that we are all for Dell building a home and the plans that he's suggested. But I feel like we need to backpedal here, and maybe he didn't understand what he had submitted. Maybe he did, but we do not want this road to go all the way through. It would be very, very, very bad for our neighborhood. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. If Mr. Schaub wants to build a single home, which it seems like he does, he would have to have the road go through, correct, and pay for it.
So again, because of the adjacent subdivisions in the past and that 1 foot strip that does separate the property from a public street, he technically has no legal access to that lot, which necessitates a map, which is what is submitted.
So, but like we said, we can rearrange the general plan. He can get an environmental impact study, and we can look at other options if he wants to go that route. My only concern, and I've seen this happen numerous times, is people will purchase things, they will submit apps, then they'll get told, you know, obviously, because you guys, nothing's triggered until someone wants to do something. So just so everyone in the public understands, a lot of times none of us, including us, public, know that when we go to get a permit, at that point in time, when you exercise a permit, everything over the last 70 years with the state and the local governments gets triggered, whether it's a road or you now have to have a 6 foot retaining wall. Or so keep that in mind when you guys are looking at stuff, to make sure if you own a business, things like that, that you find out what's going to be triggered by the permit. Perfect example, if you own a commercial place and you want to do a remodel and you don't have ADA, it's triggered at that time and you may have to put in a new driveway. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing has happened here, really more than anything, is that everything was fine until something was going to be changed. They said, okay, now we got to bring it up to code. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys that knowledge as well, how that works.
Thank you, Commissioner Rose.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Any questions for Ms. Flout? Yes.
Well, for you and for everyone here, because I understand you don't want that road to go through, and I know just make it a cul-de-sac, but CEQA is expensive, and I know this man is in deep so far, so I know he doesn't want to walk away from it. But if that's what you really want to do, then maybe have a discussion of helping him out to make it a cul-de-sac and help him with the CEQA, because that's a long process for him. And I know you don't want that road, but that's his property now, and he's responsible regardless. And that was in the general plan, and it gets triggered, unfortunately, and we have no control over that. And I'm sure he would much rather have a cul-de-sac there and have his one house. But then the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and another year, 2 years of his time, and he wants to move ahead with this as well. So it's trying to find that common ground, and our hands are kind of tied with the general plan because it is what it is, and he was given the option, but knowing what he's up against, that's a problem as well. So I understand your concern. I live by Grossmont High School. You want to talk about nightmare? I understand what you're talking about with Granite Hills, but it's just like Darren said, it's triggered, and if he wants to build there, which he does, this is kind of what has to be done, because we don't really have any control over the general plan unless he wants to change it and pay for it.
I understand. And from my understanding and all of my neighbors, the conversations that we've had with him, because we've included him in all of this, he doesn't want the road to go all the way through either. And we all think it's kind of crazy that he has to pay for the road and then give it back to the city. So which would you rather pay for, the road or for him to redo his plans? To me, it makes sense to redo his plans. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yep. Laura?
Okay, we have a speaker, Thomas Weller.
Well, I came here expecting to see the city council, and I don't see a single familiar face.
Mr. Weller, could you spell your last name for us?
Try to keep this brief.
Mr. Weller, could you spell your last name for us, please? Spell your last name.
I'm not very good at comprehending and hearing in this echoing chamber that I'm in.
Tell them your last name.
Thomas Weller. I reside at 504 Macon Street.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been a citizen of El Cajon since 1973, nearly half a century now, living on the corner of Macon and Madison. You might know me by my white Ghostbusters style mid-50s station wagons. I've always been about safety and helping others. Macon Street has always ended at Mint, and that keeps the neighborhood safer for us from speeding traffic and more difficulty of escaping for thieves and vandals. During that time, I've seen a lot happening on Madison. 50 years ago, we had a yield sign on our corner because the traffic was lighter then. Nowadays, the heavy traffic on Madison, going to work in the morning, going to school in the morning, and then going home from school and coming home from work, depending on the day, we have 4 to 6 rush hour times. People drive on the wrong side of the road to pass stop lined up school traffic. They drive across bike lanes and down the shoulder at speed and above in their ignorant impatience. We have had crashes at Macon, Trenton, and Verdon, where folks are making right and left turns into and coming out of those streets have been plowed into by those driving on the shoulder at speed and above. A friend of mine was riding his small daughter to school on his bike, was plowed into, riding on the shoulder, and thrown to the sidewalk. His daughter landed on the grass median and wasn't hurt, as his body cushioned the hit. The driver that hit them did not stop and was followed and detained by a witness. I heard the impact from my home and a wailing scream and thought that a dog had been hit before I saw the crumpled bike and him laying on the concrete sidewalk with his little daughter laying beside him on the grass median. I went to him and attended to him until the ambulance arrived. He had serious injuries but survived, crippled. Many years ago, we had an ECPD officer who would show up at these times and station himself on the median westbound by my house, and as these ignorant, careless, impatient souls would come speeding down the right-hand parking strip, he would wave them to a stop and educate them with an expensive ticket. Sometimes several at a time. I miss that officer. Many years back, I witnessed a collision between... Am I out of time?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay.
And I was enthralled with what you were saying, so I wasn't paying attention.
I'm sorry I was late. My car wouldn't start coming
okay.
here.
Thank you, Mr. Weller.
That's because I can't service them anymore.
Mr. Weller, thank you very much. You're out of time.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. Macon, Trenton, and Verdon are basically a cul-de-sac neighborhood. Our streets were relatively safe from the antics of the ignoramus drivers. Durham, on the other hand, because it goes through to Oakdale, is subject to these careless and heedless speed demons every day during the week at peak traffic times. We don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry, nor Sharon, Debbie, or Karen careening down our street.
Mr. Weller.
Putting us and our children...
How much longer do you have? Are you done?
I'm sorry for overrunning my time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Laura, do we have anyone else?
All right. I have a speaker, Norma Murphy. Are you speaking on item 2? I just want to clarify. Okay.
My name is Norma Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y, and I live on 1572 Mint Avenue. I've come here today to show what this neighborhood means to me and the negative effects it would have if the road opens. What drew me to this block back in 1998 when I, single mom with 3 kids, moved to this neighborhood because it was quiet. It was quiet and the block was this big. And the only people that would go down that block were family, friends, or somebody who was lost. We get no traffic. My kids were able to play outside on their bikes, play with their friends, what have you not, and I did not have to worry about that. And mind you, I come from a background of government and law enforcement, and I know what would happen if we opened Pandora. We all know that crime would spew into our neighborhoods. Right now, the crime rate in our neighborhood is really low. We all, the neighborhoods, take care of one another, watch out for one another, and that's what drew me to this neighborhood. And I feel for you who lives near Granite Hills. That was one of the reasons why I try to stay away from high-traffic main roads. And this was perfect for my family. And my thing is, instead, I'm sure there's a solution, that we could come up with. without having to open that road, because everything all my neighbors have said is true. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and what have you not. I think the funds need to be allocated in other avenues for our city, upgrading our roads and parks for our children. Unfortunately, crime is on the rise, and we need to take care of our first responders, law enforcement, who put themselves on the line for us. Our vision is being wavered and leading us into a direction that is not necessarily a new roadway will benefit traffic, because it won't. It would cause more, like the neighbors were saying. People trying to cross now. It's a mess. I try to cross going to my home after work, and it's a mess. But I deal with it. It's not a big deal. It would only hinder our children, and now that I'm a grandparent, I want my grandbabies to be able to play outside without worrying about a speeder going down, because we all know Granite Hills kids, woo, speed racers, go speed racers. But anyways, I hope we can come to another option, or figure something else out, because I honestly, truly believe, and like I said, I come from a background in law enforcement, and that would be not a smart move. And as far as emergency crew having to go down that road, they said, nah, that wouldn't make a big difference to them. So, but I appreciate you guys' time and listening to us all and our concerns, and I hope and I pray that, we come to where he gets what he wants. And
well, thank you very
we,
much.
the neighbors.
Your time is
Okay,
up. Thank
you.
you. Appreciate it. Laura?
Okay, I have one more speaker, Barry Alvord. I assume you want item number 2 on, okay. And can you spell your name?
Yes, my name is Barry Alvord, A-L-V as in Victor, O-R-D. I live at 1556 Mint Avenue. I'm right at the end of Macon and Mint there. We definitely will be affected by the road going through. As everyone has stated who live in the neighborhood, that will draw in an more enormous amount of traffic into the area that we didn't have before. We're changing it from a cul-de-sac to a thoroughfare, and it's that impact is weighs greatly on the neighborhood. The other area that I was looking at is the crime rate. I looked up a crime map for this area. The crime in the west area of the development is higher than it is to the east, which is obviously where we live. Opening up that road is opening up a dam that will allow that traffic, the crime traffic, to come through. And we watch for each other, but there comes a time when you can become overwhelmed with crime in the area, and we're trying to keep this neighborhood in the shape that it's in, and we're objecting to the thoroughfare being put in. I understand having the SDG&E easements and all that stuff going through, and I've been in the building trade for many years, as you can tell by the gray. Understand all that, but the thoroughfare, in our opinion, does not need to go through, whether it be a block wall, whether it be cul-de-sac. We're open to any suggestion. We just don't want the road to go through.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Spencer, can you make that smaller so I can see kind of the surrounding area a little bit more? That should do it right there, yeah. Thanks.
Laura, any other speakers?
That is the final card that I have.
Okay.
No more.
I would like to ask Mr. Shahab, a question. If you would come forward, please. I'm sure you heard all that has been said here this evening. I want to ask you a question. I was wondering, in order to get CEQA or in order to get the environmental study done, would you consider that if the neighbors got together and wanted to share in the expense of doing that? Or are you pretty much set on doing what you already intended to do?
I will definitely accept it. However, I already spent so much in engineering cost. I expected, at least from the city, come back with a proposal for the reimbursement or expediting the process.
Okay. So financially, you're not willing to extend any extra costs, which you already done?
I'm more than happy to look into the cost, see how we can justify somehow for the expense I spent
And
so
what
far.
about getting together with the neighbors?
If the neighbor are willing to help, absolutely, but I think this is something that has to be done between me and the city. The neighbor concern, definitely, I will take upon seriously, and I don't want the street as well, so I am open for suggesting whatever change we can do for the plan.
Okay, so you're open. Let me ask my fellow commissioners if they have any questions.
And if I heard correctly, if you went that route, what you would hope for is that the city would expedite something so you're not stuck in a logjam for a year and a half.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So you didn't get shared the information regarding the other options until way, way down the road. Did you ever ask if there were any other options?
Absolutely. I asked before the public work director, as was Jasmine, she's now the director, there was no options. Only option was giving is to continue with this plan or not at all. I didn't about the plan to raise chickens, about the plan to build one dream home. And Mr. Noah, I think last month he gave me this proposal, hey, there's another option, amend the general plan, which is already 2 years later. So if I had this chance probably before, I will definitely take this route instead of doing right now.
Okay. Just a question for Mr. Alvey. Was that something that was always on the table that could have been done? It just was never expressed to the applicant until recently? I'm just curious. And maybe the other people didn't know about it either. You know, maybe you knew about it with, your experience, I'm assuming. But
so for any application that's brought forward, it's brought forward by an applicant, and the role of city staff is to review it for consistency with, adopted plans and policies and make sure that it's appropriately conditioned. As we become aware of issues, we can make suggestions, but ultimately it's up to the applicant to decide what he would like to bring forward. We were aware when we issued the notice of application about the neighborhood's concerns for closing the street, and as we prepared for tonight's meeting, we once again met with the applicant to indicate, do you want to go forward with this as conditioned, as proposed by the city and the Public Works Department for the road continuation, or would you like to go back, amend the general plan, and produce that CEQA document? We spoke at a high level with regards to the costs and the additional time that would be required in order to process that, and it would be additional costs on the engineer and design side as well. And so the decision was made to bring forward what's been presented to you this evening.
I would like to ask the audience a question. How many in the audience, by a show of hands, would be willing to help Mr. Shahab in doing the environmental study so that a road might not have to be built to go through? Raise your hands if you'd be willing to help Mr. Shahab in that endeavor. Oh, that I don't know, but
it sounds to me like there could be some dialogue there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
yes,
understand.
Barbara?
Just a reminder that there is not an alternative on the agenda tonight. That
Sure.
This is what's being decided. And if you do deny the application, that you'll see on page 4 that the planning department put out findings, and you'll have to have findings that are supportable.
What about prolonging it to a next meeting, or
that would be
continuance rather, right? That would be available, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Commissioner Pollack Road?
In regards to the extended time with engineering and what have you, because I know you discussed that with him at length, but the people here don't really realize how long that's going to take for him. And right now, he's already 2 years into this deal.
Correct.
So would that add another 2 years or possibly more because CEQA's involved? So he could possibly be 5 years out from, potentially building something from. I mean, what's the time frame and cost so they maybe have an understanding of what that is for him? If you don't mind me sharing that with...
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
So the issue with the California Environmental Quality Act is the project as proposed is exempt from CEQA. And so if we were to introduce a general plan amendment, it would then elevate up to where it would need an initial study and then potentially a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration. For a negative declaration, those costs are borne by the applicant, and they would select from a consultant list that's available from the city. And so the applicant would then negotiate with those CEQA consultants on the cost. I can tell you that from recent CEQA studies, in my experience, at a minimum, you're looking at $50,000 to $75,000. And that is without any technical studies that may need to be produced as a result of the initial study. But that, again, would be a cost that would be negotiated by the applicant with the CEQA consultant. And then typically for production, that's also based on the consultant's availability and ability to produce those documents. I would say at a minimum, those are probably in the 4 to 6 month range. Depending on the urgency of a project, many consultants will expedite production of those documents for additional fees and cost. But if cost is a concern, it could be longer. And then additionally, if that change were to be proposed, the applicant on the design side would need to go back to the drawing board and look at potential public street improvements. So how would we connect the sidewalk from the north side of Oakdale to Durham, or how would we end the terminus of Mint with a cul-de-sac or additional sidewalk, or would it be a wall? So it would be a requirement of the applicant to make a proposal for evaluation by the Public Works Department, and then for review for consistency with general plan policies.
Would it be safe to say it would cost approximately $100,000 for all that?
More.
I mean, from the city's perspective, we want to say that it's at a high level, those cost estimates are what has been my experience. The market is quickly evolving these days with demand for consultants and housing construction projects. So I think it would definitely be in excess of $50,000. I don't want to say an estimate for the cost that would be borne by the applicant, but it would be significant. And I think the time would likely be at a minimum 6 months to a year before we would be back in front of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
I have one question real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
How much does the road cost to put in with the sidewalk? What's that cost?
$120,000.
Okay.
$120,000?
But you're still going to have to put some sort of drive
And that's just
in
the
there.
road, without engineering costing, without any additional fees I paid so far. I written down $170,000.
That's when it's all said and done. But you have not
That's-
you haven't outlaid $170,000 yet. But I'm sure you've laid.
No,
out
this is
some.
$170,000 right now, as we speak. I already spent $170,000 right now.
Without even putting a piece of pavement down.
Without, this is what I so far got. A lot of consultant fee, a lot of back and forward.
Yep, I understand.
So, if I got the option presented beforehand, matter of fact, if this option about a street improvement, I will never purchase this land in my lifetime.
Yep, I know.
That's a discussion. I mean, and if this option was presented before, after the fact, whatever happened or not, I will definitely go for this direction. It's more efficient, more wiser, instead of going into the street improvement, because that's a whole different world.
I know.
It's a whole different hassle.
Okay.
Question for you. If we ask for a continuance, that means it gives you an opportunity to talk with the neighbors and work out the finances insofar as getting an environmental study done and so forth. Would you be willing to do that, or would you like to have a decision made this evening?
I'd like to know what the city will do for it, majority of it. What is the city and the staffing department? Because the back and forward communication happened on the city side, the miscommunication. I have several emails back and forth that the city will pay for the road. That never happened either. And what is the city going to do for this? So the neighbors is not the issue here. The neighbors have a concern about the street, not about the cost. The cost is on my end. And the city did not provide me the right information beforehand. And now I'm here with knees down with the cost, and I'm not a developer. I don't have the money. I don't have the financial for it. But I'm already so far, I'm asking the city to come up with a resolution for the non-convenient on my end, let's put it nicely, and I hope we can come to a resolution.
I believe the resolution was that you could ask for, a change in the general plan, but the study would be borne by you, not the city, to do that. So.
And how about the cost I spent so far? Will the city reimburse me for the cost?
Oh, I don't think so. No, I don't think that's
Exactly.
out of the question.
Yeah.
So would you be willing to continue it to a later meeting, or do you want a decision this evening?
What is the impact of both of those?
If you go to a later meeting, it gives you an opportunity to talk with the neighbors and to see what the neighbors are willing to do for you. And then when you find out, then you can come back and we can hear it again and make a decision accordingly. Or, which would be an extra expense on your shoulders for sure. Or we can make a decision this evening and not go through that at all.
So the both options are either we're going to continue whatever the plan is right now, you guys make a vote on it.
Continuance, that means we're going to put off the decision until you can meet with the neighbors and make a decision with them.
And the city as
And
well.
the city, all of you.
Exactly. I want to put the second one to continue, yeah.
Okay.
The continuance, okay, you'd be willing to do that, okay.
Right.
Let me ask my fellow commissioners if they have any questions.
Should we close public hearing first?
Well, you may have a question for
I'm sorry.
Mr. Shahab. Yes. Mrs. Valles, yes.
Yes,
Commissioner Valles, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So I do have a question. When you entered into the real estate deal, were you represented by a real estate agent or attorney, or did you do it as just on your own?
Just on my own.
Okay.
So I went inside, just every single. So basically, when you go to the city plan department or the website itself, they give you the guidelines how to do it, and I follow.
I'm talking about purchasing the property from Caltrans.
Right. The Caltrans is a
okay.
private auction, so there's no real estate allowed to come in. And the way Caltrans operate, you're going to go in, they give you all the requirements, all the conditions. It's on the paper, and there was no mention about a street at all. After I went to the city again and I asked the question, they never gave me any information. I purchased it. Then there was a civil agreement made. I have an email documented as well. 4 agreements made, and the last one, the city manager made the decision, you know what, we don't have the budget for the street, even though they promised me that there will be, the street will be paid by the city, I just have to deed it, and that never happened either. So I'm here with a lot of conversation back and forward. Mm-hmm. Engineering didn't stop because we have to move forward. Purchase orders happened, and yeah, it's all unfair, injustice on my end. I purchased it without getting the right information from the city, actually.
Okay.
And I have actually witness who was with me that day during the informations.
Okay. So you were relying on a verbal agreement or something. We keep mentioning our general plan that's been on public record for 38 years.
If that was the case, then my neighbor, my Mrs. Martha, she came in 10 years ago. She had the same idea, and they never told her either. So there's definitely a communication barrier inside the city planning department, which costs for me to lose a lot of money right now.
Mm.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Pollock-Root?
Yes, thank you. Regarding this, if we do delay it so you have a discussion, I mean, is someone going to help him or have that discussion to figure out what can be done? Because I know you all don't want the street to go through, but he doesn't really have an option. So, I mean, since it is part of the general plan, which we're not voting on because it's already been decided. So I just don't want to leave him out for another month or however long this takes to, have that decision, because he wants the same thing you want, but there has to be some sort of collaborative, and that's just what I'm trying to portray, because I know that you would like to have your dream home with the cul-de-sac.
Right.
And I'm sure they would rather have that as well. So I just don't know how it's going to collaborate together so we can come to some sort of, to help him.
I do have a question of the staff. If we have a continuance, Mr. Alvey, if we have a continuance, how long would that be, a month or two, or?
I was just checking with the city attorney's office, and I wanted to potentially suggest that we could continue this item at this point in the evening to the end of the agenda, and we could discuss item 3 on the agenda and then reopen the public hearing to allow the applicant and the audience to maybe go outside and speak for a few minutes and then come back.
Did you hear that? Would that be agreeable
loud and clear.
with everyone?
I mean, we understand where he's coming from. He's forked out a lot of money to do this. I'm weighing out, $50,000 to $75,000 to kind of backpedal and go a different approach, or the $120,000 to $150,000 for the road, which it sounds like he doesn't have for that either. So I feel like we're kind of in this weird limbo of neither thing is going to happen. I don't know, and he can be honest with you.
No, that's correct.
It sounds like he can afford to build the road either. So where are we at with this?
Okay.
We would love to help him, but
Yeah.
I think the city has.
Just a moment, please. One person at a time. And if we want to speak, come up to the podium. Mr. Shahab, would you mind giving
Absolutely.
the podium to this
Absolutely.
lady? Please come forward.
I'm just saying is basically everybody who bought property on Macon, Mint, Trenton, and this and that, we were all misled because it was not disclosed. Because I asked when I first moved in 1998 about that road if it was ever. Nope. And they had it in writing and saying it was never going to be open. Talked to the neighbors, Tom, who's been here longer than I have. Never. So I don't understand. We want to do everything possible to help him, but at the same token, I feel like the city kind of helped put him in that spot. There was a lot of deceit on Caltrans, whoever he talked to. So why should the neighbors have to pay for, people that he talked to? I mean, he went in blindly. He went and asked all the questions, and this is the answer he got.
What is your name again?
Norma Murphy.
Norma Murphy, yeah.
Yes.
Like
we don't have the money.
Like it has been stated, the road has been on the general plan since 1984, and in order when you buy purchase a property, there has to be some due diligence on the part of the purchaser. So
correct, and it was never disclosed. That's what I'm mentioning. That was one of the things I asked, and it was never disclosed. They said, "Oh no, it's a dead end road," and I thought, "All right, this is perfect for my young kids."
Who did not disclose it? Who did not disclose it?
My realtor, my agent.
Realtor. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. All right. Yes, Commissioner Pollock-Rood.
Thank you. Speaking as a realtor, it's on the buyer to do their due diligence, unfortunately, because us as realtors, we're not engineers. We don't have the general plan. So it actually falls on the purchaser to do that. And he did ask, and it wasn't given. So there's some sort of breakdown in communication somewhere. But since I don't have anything in writing from when you purchased the property, and the general plan is public record that anyone can look up, but I understand, that the general public isn't looking for things like this because they don't really understand, because they don't do my job every day, and they wouldn't think I bought a piece of land, I'm going to build a house on it, and there's a lot more layers on that than just that. So unfortunately, tonight we're voting on his lot split and not the general plan, because that's already been decided.
Okay. No, sir. If you have something to say, just Mr. Shahab, would you be willing to give the podium to this gentleman?
Yeah.
Your name, Mr. Trippin? Pardon me? Trippy, right, Trippy.
So I just had a question regarding the CEQA and the environmental studies. He's exempt if he builds the road, but he's not exempt if he builds a cul-de-sac or doesn't build the road. How does that make sense? Is it because he's exempt because he's giving you guys a free road? Is that what it is? And then he has to pay the fees for the environmental because he doesn't want to give you guys a free road?
No,
it just doesn't make sense.
I can answer that, but let the staff answer that question.
Sure, I'd be happy to address that question. So the California Environmental Quality Act has certain exemptions, and the exemption that's being used for this project is called an infill exemption. And the infill exemption is when you have a project that's proposed that's consistent with the general plan and the zoning. And so the infill exemption applies because what he's proposing and the way it's conditioned is consistent with that general plan and zoning. So the issue is that when you propose a change to the general plan, the project is no longer exempt, and it requires that higher level of environmental review.
So building a road or building a cul-de-sac is completely different. Building is building, but yet one requires an environmental study and one does not, just because it doesn't explicitly say in the general plan you can build a cul-de-sac?
I think he answered that question. It's already in the general plan to have a road. A cul-de-sac is not a road, So, in order for him to be able to build that, he's got to give permission for the city to build the road and still keep it on the books. So, but if he wants to change that, he has to go change the general plan. But that's an extra expense, and that's what we're talking about, changing the general plan.
So, did they do an environmental study for the general plan to say, yeah, it's okay, you can put a road
in the
here,
beginning
everything's
they did.
just fine?
In the beginning they did, when it was instituted, yes.
So, like she said, 60 years ago? I mean...
Yeah, 30-some years ago,
so
37 plus years.
They're going to use his money now to update it because he wants a cul-de-sac versus a road because it's not in the general plan?
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, Mr. Shah, please come up front again. You heard what the public has stated. The attorney for the city stated that you can go outside and discuss it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
So, do you want to continue it to another date, or you want a decision this evening?
I'd like to continue to another date. However, if we can come to an agreement with the city staff.
Okay. All right, we heard...
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just in regards to the comments as it relates to a different agreement with city staff, the project has been conditioned by each of the departments, and so the conditions of approval reflect what is required in conjunction with this map. So there isn't an opportunity for the city to allocate funds towards a private project or towards any of the conditions of approval related for this project. The only option is just for the applicant to request the continuance, and then if he wants to request the continuance, he would then be indicating that it's his desire to move forward with the general plan amendment and to bore the costs of paying for that environmental review.
If he agrees to a continuance.
So by requesting a continuance, he would be indicating to the staff and planning commission that he wants to look at an alternative design, present an alternative design to the city for review and analysis, and then to initiate the new CEQA process in order to analyze that.
Can a continuance be done without that condition that you just mentioned?
There's no purpose to a continuance if he's
yes,
not going to.
Thank you.
If he's not going to make the adjustments,
Okay,
and I
that's
think
what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think maybe for you, maybe just looking at maybe some of the resources that are available out there for that. I mean, I would agree that it's he'd like to find a different plan. So maybe there's other avenues. Maybe you can poke around, talk to some other developers. See some suggestions at least. If not, you've already got this. You can come back and it can, go through. But there might be some other options that you're not aware of.
There is no option because there's a condition on for any type of approval. And the approval here is if I want to continue, that street is required. And if I take the other route, the staff mentioned I have to pay the whole cost again for whatever the mistake was happened on the staff side. So, is this fair?
Well,
no.
We're not here to respond to that. All right, any other questions? Mr. Shahab?
I think, when we're talking about a continuance, and what, Commissioner Moroz is saying is that there could be other funding options rather than you putting out the cost.
Yeah.
And not that there's another option necessarily for a different plan to be presented. And, I do understand that it might not seem fair, but again, that it would be like somebody telling me it's okay for me to not have my child in a car seat, and they're 3, and then a policeman pull me over and say, but there's a law in the books. And I'd say, well, I didn't know about that law. I'm from a different state. And it would still be against the law. So, I know that it's a little bit of apples and oranges to some extent, but it is understanding that, we're not trying to change a document that's been in effect for 38 years, and we don't have that authority. So it's whether we want to, whether we think it's fair or not fair, we don't have that authority, if I'm not mistaken. So it's either a decision to vote for you to have the plan that you've put forth and go forward with it, or to decline it, or vote against it, and then you would have to find another option. It's kind of a hard decision either way, because there's a lot of compelling arguments for not having the street. But again, that's not even part of what we're deciding, other than we know it comes along with the decision. So I think it's, if you would want to have a continuance to be able to investigate some other funding options. I don't know if there's grants out there. Sometimes there's money that's out there for things that you just never even know until you look. Kind of like you didn't know, there's things out there we just don't always know about. So that would be something, I guess, to think about. And we could decide if we would give you if you want the continuance or not.
So regarding to the financing, I'm already at top level of financing I can reach. There's no more options for me. I'm ready. I spent so much, and every single point I can get from, there's nothing out there.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will definitely, continue with the road. Say I have the money, I have the budget, I have the, loan from left to right, but there is no financial option at all for me. That's why I'm here to speak. Say, hey, city, I don't have the money. What happened to me, it's unfair, injustice, because due to the communication level happened in the city 4 times, not 1 time, 4 times, changing and over again, which I have to pay for the cost. I'm asking the city staff, give me type of resolution, we can, find a balance in the middle. But the city says there's no funding on their end. But why is there funding on my end?
All right. From what I'm hearing is that you're tapped out financially.
I'm completely tapped out,
So we need to make
sir.
a decision this evening.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And no other speakers, correct? Okay.
That is correct. There are no other cards.
May we have a motion to close public hearing?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made by Commissioner Circo, second by Commissioner Valles. Please vote. Okay.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. I think we really discussed this project very well this evening. All the ins and outs, I think. Really, we're kind of in a peg, and we can't move one way or the other.
Quick question. The only way he can appeal is if we deny it, and then he can appeal to city council, correct?
Again, you would have to have findings to deny it. There are already findings to approve.
All right. Next question, just on another note. Can the city council, are they allowed to change specific plans? General plans. So
yes,
we've seen these negative declarations before. We've processed them before with developers with lots of money that know what they're doing, right? Poor guy wanted to build a house, didn't realize the ins and outs. He's not a developer. He's caught in a really bad trap. So my question is there still all this process has to go through, or can city council help in that position?
So the city council would be the decision-making body if there were to be a general plan amendment that were to be proposed.
Yeah.
But it would still require an analysis under
Sure.
CEQA.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. Okay.
All right. Any other comments?
I'll just say that this is a bigger reflection of small projects. I added onto my house 4 years ago and did all the development and the plans. And as we were getting close to finishing up, there was just one more thing And city staff was very good, very friendly, and told me it would cost X number of dollars to put the sidewalk around the driveway, because I live on Oakdale, and Oakdale sidewalks are at the curb, so the curb cuts are in the sidewalk. So I did the little add-on, and my wife could not understand why the city made us pay for the sidewalk. And the answer is very simple. The city doesn't make money. The city doesn't have a job. My job may not pay much, but the city gets its funds from us, the citizens. So public improvements like this, the city has to rely on private development, whether that's a commercial enterprise or a private citizen improving a lot to make public improvements. And even though that's in the city property, it's not my property, but it was outside of my property, because I was adding on to the back of the house, I had to improve the sidewalk in front of my house. At my cost, for engineering, for materials, we did the labor, but that's how our city operates, because we don't have a huge budget of money that just comes from nowhere to do public improvements. And I feel for you guys. I travel Oakdale to 3rd to Madison because I live on Oakdale, past between 2nd and Main, and I work at Madison and Greenfield at Shadow Mountain. So I travel that road during traffic times. And if I'm 5 minutes late getting out the house, I'm half an hour late getting to work. And if I'm 5 minutes late leaving work, I'm 45 minutes late getting home. I would agree with, I don't think that road should go through based on the traffic that I see. I've seen tons of people duck down, they go down Trenton, and then I see the same car pull back out on Macon because they didn't realize that it was not a thoroughfare. And opening up Mint to Oakdale, I know what kind of traffic that would be. I live on Oakdale between Main and Madison. It's a 30-mile-per-hour posted, but 60 to 70 people pass because someone's trying to parallel park. Just give them a little space. Just give them a little time. They'll get in, and you'll get it to work. So I would like to see if there's some way we could keep the road from going through and build the property. But I also understand the general plan is what the city develops. We spend a lot of time, the city, spends a lot of time developing these plans to make sure that everything is networked in advance. Even things that aren't developed have plans so that when development happens, we know what the plan is. One of my former bosses used to say, we have to have a plan to know what changes. And I would love it if the city could find some way to assist with transitioning from this plan that we see before us tonight to a general plan amendment to make a cul-de-sac there or something. I understand that from the city point of view, we have to wait for an applicant to put forth a proposal, and the applicant has to bear the costs. We don't have the money to just fund stuff. We don't have money to do projects and do research. But I would sure love it if we could find some way to assist here. Because I know I had a couple friends look at the property, and they were like, well, it would cost too much to build the road. That's why they turned down the property. They were looking at it. They went, oh, this is a great, beautiful property. We could build a nice house on it, and we have to build the road. And they turned it down. So I know the bind you're in. And unfortunately, we don't have any tools to leverage for you on this one. If there was any tool we could use, I'd say we use it. It does highlight the communications issue, and that's something we can talk about later because there was another issue that I wanted to bring forward. But, man, this one is a no-win situation. You've already got the property. You've already put money into the engineering. You've already put money into the plans. And I remember when I got sticker shock on blueprints. It's like, how hard could it be? I can draw blueprints. I drew up a little plot and then took it to someone to say, okay, this is my idea. And he's like, well, hold on. You've got 1 page. You need at least 7 pages. It's like, 7 pages? He knew what he was doing. It cost a lot of money, and you've put the money into it. I don't want to see your money go to waste. I would like to see your house come to fruition. I think I wandered a little bit there, but the plan is either he has to spend a ton of more money to do a cul-de-sac, or he can spend a ton of money, not a ton more, but the ton that's already on the plan, to build the street.
Catch-22.
And that our decision is, do we approve the division, the subdivision?
And with a subdivision, 1 lot can be sold. Yeah. Any other comments?
I just, I know I asked a lot of hard questions, but, I agree. It's a very hard decision. I'm a pediatric nurse. I've taken care of the kids that have been walking to school and have gotten hit. Certainly, I live on a very busy street with 3 schools within a half a mile of me. One is just a few blocks away. I actually live on a corner of two of the busiest streets in El Cajon. And so I do see how people drive. And I pick my grandkids up in Ramona on Fridays. And they have, in the estates, they have the speed bumps, but they had to modify them because people complained, even though that was developed with speed bumps in them to keep the traffic slow. So, my concern, hearing about the kids and the kids that are driving crazily, but also the kids that are walking to and from school, and all that is a real concern. So to just say, well, we're going to approve it so he can move forward and road goes through, and to walk away from that going, no problem, it's not a slam dunk. To say to him, well, you know what, we're not going to approve it because I don't even know if we'd have grounds, but because I don't want the road to go through, because I don't think it would be right, and the neighbors would be unhappy. Well, now he's in a position where he's got to pay all this money to try and come up with an amendment. It is a no-win situation. It is hard because it is a public document. I mean, I don't know how we get that out more to people. I was in a similar situation when we bought our home 20 years ago. We had an unpermitted room that was allowed for 10 years, and we decided to make it a permitted space. And so, again, in the back of our house, and add a small addition on. So we have the only ADA-compliant parkway on our street that had nothing to do with the money we had to put in. And because of poor construction before, it cost us even more. But that's, and we had to pay school fees to kids that we didn't even have going to school for square footage that existed when we bought the house, but was not permitted. So, there's a lot of things that happen, and we could have investigated that further before we bought the house, but we didn't. Still not the extent of expense. But, 20 years ago, things were a lot cheaper then. They are now cheaper 2 years ago when you bought it than the construction costs are now. So, there's a lot to consider, but, part of it is what we have before us is just, do we allow the subdivision? The road is just a piece of it, but we're not saying, well, we'll allow the subdivision, but we won't allow the road, or that isn't in our purview. So we know that no matter what we decide, people are going to go out of this room unhappy, and that makes me unhappy, but I have to still follow the rules and follow what's out there. And so it's, it is a difficult decision.
Commissioner Rose, do you have something?
Yeah, so I kind of echo with what Commissioner Circo was saying. I've been looking at that map, and I've been looking at I'm just looking at it from like a public safety. Okay, let's let that road go through. But Heartland Fire's on Madison, and it can reach all those little feeder streets from Madison, so I can't see Oakdale going through, making a difference there. I used to have my office up the street on East Main Street, so when we talk about homelessness and just another road for them to go down, 100% agree with that. I can see how that census tract is being spared at the moment. and that's just a whole nother policy issue. So I'm kind of with Serco, like it'd be really nice to find a way to get this to work. And I'm supporting really just continuing it. I think there's some resources that maybe we can help guide you with, and maybe you can talk to Graham, city manager. He works for you. Everybody here works for you as a resident. You're the taxpayer. So I think it's at least worth a try. At least we don't. Could the road end up there? It could. But at least we've given it a good college try first. Maybe there's some ways we can think outside the box. It's my community as well. I live over in Granite Hills as well. And I understand what everyone's saying about the reason why they bought it. It's safe. You look at the map, there really is no way into that place. And so I can see, other than the traffic that comes down 3rd and the next street over, I can see how that's a nice community, and you want to keep it that way. And you guys pay taxes too, so I get it. So I'm really in favor of just continuing it, and I'm just saying give it a shot. Talk to Phil Ortiz from council, talk to Bill Wells. Everybody on council is available. They're very accessible, and maybe there's some help. Maybe the engineering firm will cut you a deal. I mean, there could be all kinds of things we don't know about, but I think it's worth at least trying. So I'd really be in favor of just continuing this. I don't know about my
Well, let me ask
commissioners.
staff again. What are the repercussions regarding continuance? I know you stated them before. I want you to reiterate them so Mr. Shahab can hear.
I mean, ultimately, it's up to the Planning Commission should they decide to continue the public hearing. It would afford additional time for the applicant to explore additional options. I think the thing that I was trying to emphasize was that, other than what's proposed as the conditions of approval, there aren't additional funds that the city can contribute to the project. And so that was one of the things that he had mentioned on a couple occasions about wanting to continue it to see where there were more funds. And so I wanted to emphasize in my comments that the project as conditioned in the resolution is consistent with the general plan and the requirements for the Public Works Department, but we don't have the funds in order to contribute to the project. But pursuant to the comments from Commissioner Rose, if it is continued and the applicant wants to evaluate those options and then could ultimately in 1 week, 2 weeks, or a month provide direction to staff that it's been evaluated and he wants to proceed with either what's proposed right now or an alternative, then we can evaluate that and bring that back to the Planning Commission.
So that would be open.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
I would like to ask Mr. Shahab, do I have to open a public hearing again to ask Mr. Shahab what his sentiments are? Or no?
We could just continue this public hearing to a date certain.
Okay, so we don't have to ask Mr. Shahab that question.
It's up to him.
It's up to him. So that's, can I call him up?
Yes.
Mr. Shahab, could you come up to the podium, please?
Yes.
You heard what has been said, and what are your thoughts on that?
It's very hard to make a decision about the financial aspect of it, but I hear one thing and struck me directly is that the commissioners can vote for a type of amendment to the general plan without any cost. Is that correct? That they have the authority to do that.
Staff?
So the application that's been submitted to the city is for a tentative parcel map for a 2-lot subdivision. And so no change to the general plan has been proposed. And so that has not been noticed to the public, nor has it been evaluated as part of staff's review of your project. And so essentially the applicant would be changing the scope of their application in order to change the general plan. And even if the project were to be approved tonight by the Planning Commission and were to be appealed to the City Council, that decision to change the general plan would also not be in front of the City Council. Right. So it would still have to go back to the start and be evaluated for those changes and to look at those impacts associated with changing what's been on the general plan.
So just so I think I explain, it would be basically like bringing in a whole new application, starting all over. I mean, for better terms, right?
Correct.
It's completely different than what we're trying to do. Now, you mentioned and I wanted to clarify this, Is there still a possibility to not have that street run through and still have more than one, and still do a lot split or have two parcels?
I mean, at a conceptual level, yes, that would be possible, but it needs to be completely evaluated for, there's infrastructure that's planned to go through there in conjunction with this, and so it needs to all be evaluated, and it needs to become as a proposal from the applicant by their engineer to be evaluated by staff.
That makes sense.
Okay, so Mr. Shahab, the decision is yours.
Sounds like I just have to re-propose with a new drawing, and then you guys are going to review it, and then there will be a decision made with this commissioners.
But you still have to get an environmental impact report.
You still have to do that 9 yard, okay. And what kind of compensation do or reimbursement or any type of support from the city staff?
I don't think there's none.
None.
No reimbursement.
No, but I would look at grants in California. There's a ton of grants California has that I think there's a lot of things I think that are on the books now that make it actually easier for you to maybe look at some options when it comes to that. I know you're already thinking about how you want to build and stuff. So, I mean, all I was saying was, maybe something will pop up. Maybe it's worth a pause, because you've got this. You can come back anytime. We'll be in front of you again, either to approve or deny. We've got that. You've got this part. But if there's any chance of maybe something that was missed, or talking to an engineering firm and asking them, hey, what's the real cost of this? It may be worth looking into. Maybe they'll give you a credit for the work they've done, things like that. That's what I was thinking.
And how about the time frame? Can we expedite it?
City staff would be happy to expedite and work closely with the applicant on any resubmittals, but a lot of the timeline is going to be dependent upon the applicant and the applicant's consultants, so them producing new documents and so forth, but we are happy to make this a priority.
Okay.
I'd like to continue.
Continuance? Okay, got it. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, I think we're at the end of the line. Anyone want to make a motion?
I move to continue to date uncertain.
Date certain, yeah.
Staff would recommend that we continue to a date uncertain, and then that would allow city staff the opportunity to provide an additional notice to the public about the updated hearing, just because a lot of the timing of the continuance is going to be dependent upon the applicant and his outreach with consultants, and so I don't want to have us continue to a date certain and then have the public come back without an answer. So let's continue to a date uncertain.
A motion has been made, a continuance, a date uncertain. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Circle, second by Commissioner Pollock-Rood. Please vote.
Motion carries by a unanimous vote.
Very good. Thank you very much. I wish you the best on your endeavors.
Yeah, and I would really recommend reaching out maybe to some of the council or even Graham on this one if you really want to get see what there is. They might be able to point you in some directions too that they know about. Okay.
Okay, third item is Babylon Palace. Review banquet hall operation with on-sale alcoholic beverages and joint use parking lot. Accept report from staff.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Again, this is Noah Alvey, Deputy Director for Community Development, presenting this item. So here you can see a view of the subject site at 456 North Magnolia Avenue. That's located on the west side of North Magnolia Avenue between Wisconsin Avenue and West Madison Avenue. So here, just some background. Conditional use permit number 2205 was approved by the City Council in 2014, and that was for the site to be operated as a banquet hall. The ongoing conditions of approval are excerpted here on this slide. They essentially require compatibility with surrounding properties and uses, and that the sale of alcohol should not create problems or nuisances. So tonight's discussion item is related to an increase in calls for service at the site by the police department and events that have caused problems, including shootings that have occurred at the site. So the intent of staff is to bring attention to the problems and to provide notice to the property owner that if the problems aren't addressed, that staff could initiate the revocation of the conditional use permit. So between February of 2021 and 2022, a total of 49 calls for service occurred. Lieutenant Sprecco, who's at the back of the chambers this evening, is here. He's going to provide some additional information as it relates to the calls following this summary. For background, staff would like to note that the operator was provided notice regarding the total calls for service on March 25th. And then following that notification, Lieutenant Sprecco and myself met with the operator at the site. And following that, a plan to address these concerns was presented by the operator on April 4th. And so the operator is also present here in the chambers this evening. So staff's recommendation for this item is just that the Planning Commission accept this report, provide feedback to staff on the operator's plans to eliminate the nuisance activities at the site. And so at this time, Mr. Chairman, what I would recommend is that you invite Lieutenant Sprecco up to the dais in order to address the Planning Commission, and he can provide a little additional information regarding the calls for service. Okay. And then I would suggest inviting the operator to step forward.
Okay. Thank you. Lieutenant Sprecco, could you please come forward? How do you spell out Sprecco?
S-P-R-E-C-C-O.
Okay.
Is Eddie Sprecco your cousin?
Yes, he is.
All right.
Thank you for having me. Within the last year, we had responded to, as Mr. Alvey said, 49 calls for service at Babylon Palace. Of those, half were quite concerning due to the violent nature of the calls. We responded to assaults, fights, public drunkenness, reckless driving, and most concerning were shootings. Many of those calls, due to the number of people that were at the establishment, it required for us to reach out to neighboring agencies for assistance from the California Highway Patrol, the Sheriff's Department, and aerial support to break up crowds and assist with crime scene investigations. Two of the shootings in particular, when officers responded on scene, they found multiple different calibers of shell casings in the area, which would indicate that multiple firearms were being used. And in one specific case, as officers were investigating a shooting, we received calls from Grossmont Hospital, who received a patient with a gunshot wound to the leg who had come from an event at Babylon Palace. We were able to obtain surveillance footage from Babylon Palace on that specific incident and witnessed at least two different people shooting back and forth at each other in the parking lot where other people were present. And then in another shooting, we had an officer who was at the intersection of Magnolia and Madison who actually witnessed a vehicle coming out of the alley with a person hanging out of the vehicle, armed with a firearm, and was shooting back in the direction of where Babylon Palace was. And in that case, 9 bullets had actually struck a neighboring business, which thankfully was unoccupied. As a result of all the calls for service that we responded to, specifically the shootings, officers recovered a total of 3 firearms. And the incidents themselves have become quite a strain on law enforcement services. Throughout the last year, we have had several conversations with the owner who was present, and in some cases he was present during those incidents, so he was aware of the incidents that were occurring as a result of the activities and the events that were being held at Babylon Palace. Since February of this year, and our meetings that Mr. Alvey and I have had with the owner, there have been no additional calls for service that they were directly responsible for. And that is all.
Lieutenant Sprecco, What kind of, were they having concerts? What kind of events were going on at the time when these occurred?
So in conversations with the owner and events that were advertised publicly on social media, the events that we had been responding to that were specifically of concerns were music-type concerts, rap concerts. There were a couple events that were described as liquor and lingerie concerts and a twerking event at Babylon Palace.
Okay. Fellow commissioners, do you have any questions for Lieutenant Spreckle?
I know that, and I'm not sure if this is a question for Lieutenant Spreckle or not, but I know that, you can have, people use these as banquet halls, okay? Where's the line between a nightclub and a banquet hall, or a strip club or whatever the heck you want to call them? Is there a fine line in that? And maybe you know that, Alvey?
Yes, I can address that. It essentially boils down to when the requirement for an ABC license is triggered. So at a banquet hall, so typically, like if I were to be reserving the banquet hall for a wedding, I could bring a caterer to the property, and the caterer would presumably have their ABC license in order to distribute alcohol for the event. So the issue would be, having someone sanctioned to sell alcohol there. So these types of concerts wouldn't fall under a catering permit type event. We, code enforcement or code compliance staff, I should say, haven't specifically identified or been able to document these issues aside from the advertisements that we've seen for the events. But really, the major issue that we had was in response to the conduct and nuisance activities associated with the events. So we've discussed both of those with the operator, and so he's aware of what's required.
Okay. In 2014, the conditions use was that family events, it was weddings, anniversaries, birthdays, which, when you have these events, you have food with alcohol. Yep. Where a concert, there is no food usually, and if you're drinking, it causes problems.
Sure.
So the conditional use that we approved was not being adhered to.
Okay.
Any other questions of the lieutenant?
Just one. I know we're talking about this period from February 2021 to 2022. Is it because this was a very unusual amount of calls on this particular establishment that's now bringing it to your attention, and the nature of the types of calls? Is this unusual activity for what you've been seeing here, or has this been going on and it just seemed to ramp up starting with February 2021?
We believe it was as a result of him changing up, the business owner, changing up his business model, which was directly related to the impact of COVID. In meetings with him, he specifically told us that he was trying to bring in additional revenue, and by bringing in the revenue, it required different types of events that he was hosting. So as far as your specific question, prior to February 17th of 2021, we weren't responding to an unusual number of calls. It was during that specific time period where we were having lots of conversations, and it required us to take an additional look at what exactly was going on and why it was occurring.
Commissioner Pollock-Ruth?
Thank you. So from having the discussions with him, it was discovered that the different events, just the different crowd, then it caused issues with the excessive calls due to the different clientele that was coming in due to the change of business plan.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Lieutenant Spreckle.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Mr. Tabarkian, did I pronounce it correctly?
Close.
How do you say your name?
Mike Terzabashian.
Terzabashian. Okay, thank you.
Terzabashian. Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name, again, is Mike Terzibashian. Do you want me to spell it?
No, I have it here on the agenda.
Anyway, I'm the general manager for Babylon Palace. Not quite a decade ago, about 8 years ago, my mom, who's almost a decade older now, and by the way, today's her birthday, and they timed it, not me. She's 83 now. But at any rate, we opened some 8 years ago in El Cajon, and I guess from listening to your conversations and all of the people that were here, it made me more so realize that El Cajon's more of a tight-knit community. And unfortunately, one of the things we did because of COVID, we nearly had 100% cancellations. So we were looking at any type of revenue just to keep our doors open. We didn't get a lot of the shattered venue grants. Actually, we got none. And we aren't a restaurant either. We couldn't get any of those things. We did get a government loan, which helped me make it through. So that was good. So we changed our business plan, so to speak. We started taking on some concerts. They didn't have any issues with coming to the venue. Of course, bringing those types of concerts to a more quiet community like this had very, very negative impact. And it put a lot of stress on the police force, and I really appreciate them for being there. Every time I called them, they responded quickly. They helped us alleviate the issues. It was very apparent to me after the first shooting that we needed to stop doing these types of concerts. I had contracts with a lot of them. Some of them were willing just to take their money back. Some of them took additional fees to reschedule and move. And since about a month, we've discontinued all of them. We've had 0 police calls since we've gotten rid of them. We primarily do happy events, and that was the thing that really got us is, granted, yeah, people were coming. It was mostly a younger crowd and lingerie parties and whatnot. It's not what we really like. I do birthdays, I do weddings, engagements, things of the like. I enjoy the work. It's actually a lot of fun, even though we work 7 days a week. Sometimes it's devastating. I don't go home till 3. We came to El Cajon because I'd been here decades before in the Westfield Mall. I was familiar with the area. I knew that it had a lot of potential. I knew it was a banquet hall. There was a big need for it. My manager that assists me is from the Chaldean community, even though I'm Armenian. But we do pretty well. The Chaldean community still likes their own loaves. I only do about 10 to 20% business with them. I found other niches which helped us survive, but that's aside from the issue here anyway. But we do a lot of Latin parties. We do a lot of quinceañeras, which are like a Sweet 16 birthday. A lot of them were leaving El Cajon, going down to Chula Vista because of that need. So I'm proud to say that we've kept a lot of them. And more so now, we've done so well, we're bringing them from there to here because we have parking. 3rd Avenue, Chula Vista has no parking. So we've done a lot to help the community in that aspect. And I hope the City Council can forgive me a little bit for the glitch we've had, but we've pretty much discontinued them. If I may add, the only other types of concerts I'm doing where there is no food is where I have middle-aged people coming to do a salsa night. They come and do dancing, and there's no fights or anything. We do that only once a month, but thank God we were almost sold out to the end of the year. The calendar's been really busy. Even if I have empty dates, I don't need to fill them with concerts anymore because we have enough revenue. I could stay home and take a Friday night or a Sunday night off. We don't have any guns in the facility. There's no more shotgun weddings. Sorry, I had to throw that one in. But in general, we've resorted back to what we do. The whole idea of coming to El Cajon, by the way, was prior to this, we had a banquet facility in the Best Western in La Jolla. And my ideal was to bring that kind of caliber of work to a more lower rent district. And I think we fit in well. We've competed well with the local banquet halls. Each one's found their niche. A lot of my clientele, just the last wedding, a lot of them were in the Marriott. But I like doing more high-end work. and keeping the prices reasonable. I have a 20-year lease on the facility. We've done major improvements. We're always doing improvements. I'm working right now with Officer Nick Spreco. I'm sending him a list of all of our events every month just so he's aware. I do get some cancellations here and there, and I try to stress to him sometimes, don't believe everything you see on social media. Because that lingerie party with alcohol, they were San Diego State University. And obviously I wasn't going to have any alcohol when it's all college kids. We did not serve alcohol that night. But they advertised it as such. So sometimes social media is a little deceiving. But back to the root of the problem, we did realize the problem, the issue, right away, especially when I saw shootings. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not following the timeline. But
Well, I don't think you have a timeline.
Oh, okay.
No, you don't.
But anyway, I appreciate you being here to take the time to listen to me. And we definitely took into consideration all of the advice that Mr. Noah Alve. No, they were all very nice to me. We've always cooperated with everyone. We're adding more cameras, even though I don't think we're going to need them now that we're not doing many concerts. We're almost all birthdays and weddings, engagements, and the like.
Well, I'm glad that you're concentrating on family events.
Oh, yeah, well, that was the goal from the beginning. I mean, that's what we did before. But I can't describe to you how COVID just literally wiped out every penny we had. And I couldn't get enough grants because we didn't fit in any model.
Right, okay. You don't own the building?
No, the person that actually owns it had a adjacent store in the malls. And then when I was looking for a banquet facility, and I called it, and I was surprised it was him, right away he gave it to me. Because he'd known me for nearly a decade. I was with Westfield for about 17 years.
Wasn't that building before the El Cajon post office?
Yeah, originally. The building is amazing. It's built like a government shelter.
Yeah, solid cement?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's good. I soundproofed it. I did so much renovation to it. We didn't open for nearly a year. I gutted the entire sewer system. I did all the electrical. I soundproofed the entire thing. Even though there's no neighbors next to us, right. There's the Crystal Ballroom if you're from the street, to the left of me. And then there's a dental office and attorneys who leave by the time we fire it up. And there's nothing for a block out. So it's ideal as a banquet facility.
Well, Commissioner, you have any questions for Mr. Tarzibakian?
Well, I'm glad that you survived.
Thank you.
I mean, not
Me
only
too.
with COVID, but then it sounds like this experiment went kind of awry on you. And I'm glad you saw the writing on the wall, and nobody got hurt in your staff,
Well, it was more than just the staff. I was worried about everyone in general. I mean, for me anyone to get hurt, because of what we did, would have been devastating. Because, we do fun things. I sit there and I'm smiling literally the whole night, watching people dance and have fun, and then when they do their speeches and whatnot. Imagine going to a wedding 3 times a week. It's been definitely a great experience. I just wanted to share that with you guys, but the only thing I really want to reiterate is we have been a good part of the community. I've done a lot for the community. We do almost, right now this year we're doing about 20,000 guests a year. Wow. Before COVID, though, we were between 30 and 40,000 guests. We had huge traffic.
All right, well, hopefully it'll get right back there.
Well, we're getting there, but no more hip-hop concerts, and unless they're in their mid-40s, 50s, I'm going to feed them and sit them down. Otherwise, it's really cute looking the salsa nights. I'm Armenian, so I don't speak as much Spanish, but I listen to so many Latin songs all the time. Now they go along in my head.
Yeah. Maybe you need an ambulance there when you have a senior salsa dance.
A few of them, actually. Those concerts are great because they have tables and chairs and seats, where the younger crowd, they didn't want anything. Basically, as a venue, we rent to one person, the one person doing the wedding or the birthday or the quinceañera. The concerts, it was basically the same kind of a thing where I rented to one person. But as Noah said, there's some issues with the alcohol. So to stay on the safe side, we talked to some attorneys, and I'm working on getting what's called a, this sounds deceiving and it sounds horrible, but it's called a club license. So where it is, you go to a golf course, it's a club. So one individual can rent the clubhouse of the golf course, and anyone coming into the club can still buy liquor. In general, most of our liquor is free. What we have in the bar, my bartender makes more in tips than what we sell. So we're not really under the ABC blanket, but I want to make sure, because we offer high-end liquor, but I can't give them very expensive liquor for free. So I have it there, and the guests, if they don't want, something very moderately priced, they'll just pay another $5 or $10, but that's not the norm. As with that club license, I'll be able to sell that $100 or less legally. And it's not expensive. It's a $1,000 a year license versus the restaurant license at, I believe, $17,000 from the ABC or $100,000 on the open market.
In your events, you offer free liquor?
Almost all of them, yes.
That's an invitation to get drunk.
Well, most people, they go to weddings for the open bar at any facility, not just mine, every single one of them. My bartenders are very good. They all have worked in restaurants and clubs. They know when to cut people off. The security always watches them. We've been doing well for 8 years. Thank God, because it is a touch-and-go business. It takes a lot of effort. It's not for everyone.
I married 3 daughters, and we did have an open bar, but like an hour open. It was a time frame. After that, it closed down.
Some people do that. I'm always surprised. Some people tell me, Mike, we don't want to open it till 8 and, finish it off by 11. I don't want my guests drunk.
Oh, that's a long time to get drunk. 8 to
No,
11?
but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But one of the things that we do, I tell my bartender the same thing. I want people to come have fun. Don't give them a full shot. Let them drink a big strawberry margarita, but just give them a little bit. So even if they're going to drink quite a few drinks, they're not going to get the total impact. I let people leave their cars. I always encourage people to carpool. So we're always on the side of keeping everyone safe. And we were over a decade in La Jolla, no problems. And here for the, pre-COVID, we've had a few incidences, but not too many. Any questions for me?
Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And thanks for all your help for helping me get this thing together. Appreciate it.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the intent of this item was really just to bring this to the attention of the Planning Commission because of the safety issues that were going on out there. Staff, including Lieutenant Spreco and myself, will continue to work with the operator. And so we will continue to monitor the situation. If things regress and we see additional problems, we've provided notice to the operator that we would potentially initiate revocation of the conditional use permit if conditions degrade like they were previously. But if we stay on the right path and continue forward, we will just continue to monitor, and then I can provide updates to the Planning Commission through staff communications as we move forward.
Thank you. Any communication from the commissioners or reports?
I do have a comment. I play games. I play lots of board games, and off-the-shelf games, you guys are familiar with it. They move from right over here, I'm not quite sure of my orientation, to by Parkway Plaza. And I noticed that they had a sign in the window that said they had an application for permit in progress for alcohol. And 2 weeks ago, I went in. I go in a lot to borrow games. And one of the guys said, "Are you on the Planning Commission?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Is there any way?" And the owner told me that they were going through the process and felt like every step of the way there was another step, but they didn't know what that step was until they talked to somebody in the planning department. And so I wanted to make sure that we as a planning department are letting the consumers know, the applicants know what the next step is. Because it sounded to me, and I don't know how much of it was their perception and how much of it was real, but when their perception is that if they don't ask, nothing happens, that reflects poorly on us as a city. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Although when I went in last week, they said, hey, we got it all done. And I forget who they talked to, but they were like, and thank you so much. And I didn't do anything. So good job, guys. But I would like to make sure that we let applicants know what the next step is, that they're clear on, hey, this next step is on you, and that they're not having to wait and wait and wait and then call and then find out, oh, you should have done this.
If I could just fill in a couple gaps there.
Absolutely.
So they had applied for a pre-submittal meeting middle of last year, actually. And at that time, the zoning code did not permit the proposed use, the on-sale alcohol service, within SP 19 for the Parkway Plaza Mall.
Mm-hmm.
So we could not process their application at that time. Planning Commission and then City Council approved the zoning code changes that included SP 19 in that language, and so then we were able to process their application. And yes, it was just recently approved. I think end of last week, maybe.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Commissioner Pollock-Root?
Sorry, I hate to be rude, but I have a plane leaving for DC in an hour, so
Okay,
I don't normally want to leave, but I still need to get to the airport and make it through.
I think we're done. We're done?
No, I would
Make a motion to adjourn then.
make a motion to adjourn so I can make my flight, please.
On May 17th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Well, do we need to make a motion
Yes.
to accept the report?
No.
Okay. All right.
Motion to adjourn seconded.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Pollock-Root and second by Commissioner Circle. Please vote.
You better hurry. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Done.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.